The New York Giants were in prime position to upset the Dallas Cowboys, but Brian Daboll blew it. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the mastermind, Ross Jackson. On today's show, we're going to look at some of the best games of week 4. Can the Baltimore Ravens prove that they are back? The Packers cannot win this game against the Vikings without Jordan Love, but we're going to start with this Thursday night football matchup where Brian Daboll really hurt his football team. Before we get into it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. Thanks for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Make sure that you tune in later for the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL and step into the barbershop with Tony Wiggins as he chops up some of the best NFL topics heading into a big-time week 4. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Ross, I know that it was a bit of an ugly Thursday night football game here. Cowboys beat the Giants 20-15. But the reality is I thought this was a good football game. And honestly, the Giants had a great chance to win. I think what this boils down to is the Dallas Cowboys defense stepping up. But more importantly, Brian Daboll blew it for his team. They had an opportunity at the 3-yard line, finally in the red zone, finally had a chance. And rather than go for it and take that opportunity, the New York Giants settled for another field goal, which they only got 5 field goals on the night. And ultimately, getting another field goal there when Dallas didn't score a ton of points, but they were driving down the field pretty much every single time and getting into field goal range, which for Brandon Aubrey is anywhere on the field. It feels like it's, despite that miss at the very end, but to me, Brian Daboll had a chance to go aggressive. And when Daniel Jones had been struggling to throw deep all night long and the explosive plays weren't there for the Giants, you could not waste that opportunity and could not come away from that with a field goal. And that's what the Giants do. And ultimately, I think Brian Daboll, as the head coach, really blew this for his team.
Yeah, man. You know what they say? Scared money don't make money. And that's exactly what Brian Daboll proved. He is Thursday night football. The laundry list of issues for this guy just gets longer and longer and longer. Now you can add, come on the 3-yard line. This is the opportunity to go out there, show some force, and look, it ends up being a part of the big difference in this game as well. When you lose the game on a 5-point deficit, but you give away a 4-point opportunity swing in that situation, it wouldn't have won you the game, but it would have gotten you a little bit closer. Probably would have eased some things up. And it gives you a little bit of momentum that you're not going to get with 5 field goals in a single game. This was a very scared Brian Daboll and a very scared New York Giants offense that also, by the way, cannot get a run game going because of their inability to just address that running back position over the course of the offseason. I thought that reared its ugly head, averaging less than 2 yards per carry in this game against that Dallas defense that has been very gifting to opposing running backs.
No doubt. We talked about it yesterday. Me and Michelle, the data queen herself, we brought up the numbers. The Cowboys were the worst run defense in the NFL coming into the week. They had given up 185 yards a game. And I understand that you don't play Derrick Henry every single week. Like I recognize that. But at the same time, I'll tell you, I think that Devin Singletary is a fine running back. Like I think that Brian Daboll's inability to scheme up a proper run game against this Dallas Cowboys porous defense, like again, for me, it all comes back to Brian Daboll. And when you know that your team is struggling to create explosive plays, to not take the opportunities that actually are there for you, get Daniel Jones involved with his legs, get him on a read option. Like there are many ways to do this. But moving away from that, we do got to give credit to the winners of this game, the Dallas Cowboys. They moved to 2-2 on the year. And the big thing for me is looking at the Cowboys, and I know the Cowboys fans are going to roll their eyes here, but the Cowboys won the game, but at what cost? our guy Landon McCool from Locked On Cowboys talked about exactly that.
The Dallas Cowboys win on the road against the New York Giants, but at what cost? Hi, I'm Landon McCool with the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and the Cowboys pull away and get the win 20-15 in New York against the Giants. But unfortunately, they also suffered some injuries in the process, namely DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. We're still waiting to hear back on the severity of Micah Parsons. Lawrence was trying to come back into the game. As far as the game itself, I thought the Cowboys kind of exercised a little bit of the demons that were happening on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the run defense game. I thought Mozzie Smith played fantastic, which was really great to see, which could be an answer to some of these issues in the run game if he could finally start to get it going. And then on the offense side, it felt like they moved the ball a lot better. They were getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb, who had a much better game tonight. And it felt like they figured something out a little bit more with the run game. The run game was more efficient. They were giving the ball more to Rico and giving it to Zeke late. And I thought that was a really efficient way of doing that. For more on this, make sure you check us out this week on the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
Now, the latest update, Ross, on the injury to Micah Parsons, he did tell a teammate in the locker room, yeah, I'm good. Now, obviously, we don't know for certain. That's not a medical analysis. Right. That's him, saying he's good, but usually the player knows what's going on with their body. But I do want to talk about the game more here because we got to give that Dallas Cowboys defense credit. After being gashed 3 weeks in a row, they really step up, like you mentioned, hold the Giants to only 26 yards here. I think that DeMarvion Overshone, the linebacker out of Texas in his second year, just continues to impress with his speed and his violence. I thought him and the interior defensive line of the Cowboys really did a great job to make it hard on the Giants, but there were some blown opportunities for the Giants too. I thought that Wan'Dale Robinson, who had a great game, dropped a pass that was Daniel Jones got it in. Obviously, Malik Neighbors gets the concussion on the sideline, but Daniel Jones did put the ball there for him to make a play on it. Daniel Jones was far from perfect, but I guess I want to give the Cowboys credit for what they've done here, but feels like, there were some opportunities where they could have gotten beat if the Giants took advantage.
Yeah, I don't think you're scheduling the parade for the Dallas Cowboys just yet, right? But hey, they needed a win like this. I know Marcus Mosher as well as Landon McCool over at Locked On Cowboys earlier this week. We're talking about how much the Dallas Cowboys needed to win a close game or show that they could win close games. I think this qualifies. Like, this is one where they had to hang on and get something done. And look, not everything went their way over the defensive side either. I thought Andrew Thomas, the offensive tackle for the New York Giants, did a fabulous job against Micah Parsons. According to Next Gen Stats, on 13 pass rushing matchups between those two, only one pressure for Micah Parsons on those situations. The New York Giants did a really good job keeping the pass rush at bay, but the Cowboys were still able to produce without getting a ton of pressure on Daniel Jones. They still covered well. The linebackers played extremely well and were all over the field when it came to the run game. I think you saw them be able to kind of supplement their brand of football, the Mike Zimmer brand of football, without necessarily having to be that crazy hair on fire 50 pressure package type of defense in this one. I think that's a positive sign for Dallas Cowboys fans.
Yeah, 100%. And you talking about the Dallas Cowboys defensive line and some of their edge rushers makes me think about how the Giants defensive line didn't get it done. They only get one sack on Dak Prescott. You have Dexter Lawrence. You have Brian Burns. You have Kayvon Thibodeau. You expect better from the Giants defensive front. It wasn't a good enough game for them. Even if they did hold the Cowboys to only 20 points, you expected maybe some more big plays from that money up top. Got to give credit to CeeDee Lamb for a very good game as well. His touchdown pass, his big play for 55 yards changed the game at the end of the day. But with that being said, big week 4 slate ahead in the NFL. The Packers need Jordan Love back. The Ravens need to prove that they are ready to be contenders after a slow start to the year. A lot to discuss. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's why it's the #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. On PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Think Tyreek Hill, more than 90 receiving yards. Dak Prescott, more than 200 passing yards. Josh Allen, less than 240 passing yards. All you do is pick more or less. Make sure that you download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Ross, a big week in the NFL. Week 4, we got some big-time matchups, and we are going to start with an NFC North showdown, a long-time rivalry between the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. Before we do want to remind you guys, make sure that you tune in for the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL. Step into the barbershop with the barber himself, Tony Wiggins, as he talks about this great Week 4 slate as well. But I got something to say about this, Ross. I know that anybody who follows the Titans and follows the show for me over at Locked On Titans would probably call this a little bit of haterade, especially after Malik Willis off the Titans in Tennessee last week. But I don't think that the Green Bay Packers can beat the Minnesota Vikings with Malik Willis at quarterback. Minnesota Vikings defense is a different beast than the Indianapolis Colts defense or the Tennessee Titans defense. But Peter Bukowski and Luke Braun in their crossover Thursday talked about exactly that.
The Packers version that we thought we were going to get, we haven't seen since week 1 because Jordan Love has been hurt. The expectation as of this minute is that Jordan Love is going to have a good chance to play on Sunday. That's just the expectation. I don't know that it's any better than like 60-40 or 70-30 at this point, but I think the expectation that we should operate under is it's more likely than not that Jordan Love is going to play. Before we get to that part of it, though, what have you made of what we've seen the last 2 weeks with Malik Willis, who is, if you look at the efficiency numbers, one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league the last few weeks?
Well, QB wins, baby. You can't win without him, right?
Well, they've won, but he actually looks good doing it. I'm talking about the efficiency numbers, the EPA per play, those sorts of things. Like he actually produced in addition to the fact that they won those games.
Okay, listen, Ross, I know I'm the madman. I know the data that Pete is bringing up. I've seen all of it. You know, Malik Willis is one of the most efficient passers in the NFL. Stop the nonsense. This is where the data, we get too close to the data. It's like everybody complaining about the Chiefs right now because the data doesn't look good. Don't be dumb. Don't be dumb, okay? Malik Willis isn't all of a sudden one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. They've had good game plans. But again, this Minnesota Vikings defense just shut down the Houston Texans, one of the Super Bowl favorites coming into the year. It was 34-7. Malik Willis has been excellent, and the Packers have survived the Jordan Love situation, but they need Jordan Love back to win this game. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, look, first of all, I want to commend Luke Braun for just understanding how to hit Peter Bukowski right where it hurt. Oh my goodness. There was so much pain in that exchange. That was so great. Here's what I will say. Because of how efficiently the Green Bay Packers run the football, I think they could win with either quarterback. But do I think that you have a better chance with Jordan Love? Absolutely. Every team has a better chance of winning a football game with their starting quarterback. The mastermind at work right here, giving you the best analysis ever. Right, yeah, except for the Panthers. But we all know that the starting quarterback in Carolina is Andy Dalton, right? So we all knew what that was going to be. But I will say this, Josh Jacobs right now, the running back for the Green Bay Packers, 127 yards over, rushing yards over expected right now, leads the NFL in that category. Malik Willis has been excellent against the blitz. He's been blitzed 40% of his snaps, one of the most out of qualifying quarterbacks in the league, and has managed that very well. That's a good blend for a young quarterback. And so do I feel like Green Bay is dead to rights if Malik Willis is their quarterback? No. Do I feel like they'll have a better chance of winning with Jordan Love? Absolutely.
I think they are dead to rights if Malik Willis plays. You see those disguised coverages. Brian Flores is running right now. He's got Harrison Smith on the line of scrimmage, dropping into deep half. What is going on? But we are gonna transition here, and the Philadelphia Eagles take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is a fraud watch game to me, Ross. You have the Eagles who are super banged up, Tampa Bay coming off an embarrassing loss to the Denver Broncos that really came out of nowhere. We're going to throw it to my guy, James Yarko, and Gino over at Locked On Eagles to talk about this one.
I think you hit it right on the head. Who's actually going to make the trip down there at the wide receiver position? And I don't know what it is about the Bucs, but anytime they're going to be playing the Eagles, AJ Brown just seems to be injured. But it was an unfortunate soft tissue injury. Hopefully he comes back after the bye next week when we face the Browns. Devontae Smith, he could potentially be out with a concussion after a vicious blindside hit on him. You lose a rotational player in Britton Covey, who was getting a decent amount of target share with A.J. Brown being out. So you're potentially saying your number one wide receiver in this game might be Jahan Dotson. But the other part of it is, if you bank on those guys that you have hit home runs with in the past, Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, like they did on that last drive to go and beat the Saints last week, that's where your haymakers are going to come in. Those are the guys you got to worry about. But when it comes to playing personnel,
listen, I think that the Eagles could still win this game without the wide receiver help. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are giving up 137 rushing yards per game. So the Eagles, even without the wide receivers, they could still run the ball with Saquon Barkley. I think that they're going to be fine. And at the end of the day, again, this is a fraud watch game for me. Tampa Bay should win this game, but I think the Eagles still have enough to win it. I'm very interested in this matchup.
Yeah, and I think the protection in front of Baker Mayfield needs to be a lot better than it is right now as well, especially going into a game against Jalen Carter, who just wreaked havoc all over the New Orleans Saints offense in that Sunday win down here in the Bayou. You've got a guy in Jalen Carter who's going to be mostly matched up with Cody Mock over on that offensive line, who's given up the most or tied for the most pressure surrendered by a single player on an offensive line. So that's a good matchup for that interior defensive line of Philly, which could play a large role in not allowing Tampa to be able to get a bit of a run game going so that they can't control the clock, which was a big issue for New Orleans, but then also B, getting after the quarterback and maybe forcing Baker Mayfield into some mistakes with that interior pressure. Baker does a good job getting the ball out quickly, which could help there. But look, interior pressure is really, really hard to overcome for, pocket passing type quarterbacks.
And I would say a shorter quarterback.
And a shorter quarterback. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean,
100%.
Hashtag short kings. I'm always trying to represent, but, we got to be honest here as well. Yeah, I think the trench play is just so important. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to in football. And if the Eagles can win up front, they're going to have a great chance to really steal this game with a lot of the – it's funny, we think Eagles, we think Hurts with the playmaking, and we think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but at the end of the day, it's the offensive line and the defensive line that have been standouts for Philly when they've had their best runs here in the last few years. But a lot of great games this weekend. The Baltimore Ravens against the Buffalo Bills, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Detroit Lions. So much going on. It's the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans, hey, NFL fans, I'm talking to you. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets on FanDuel. It is truly an all-encompassing hub for football information. And right now, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed with a $5 bet. I'll be honest with you, not a big Colts guy, but Colts getting 1.5 at home this week. I'm sorry, that's a bet that I really like. If you like it too, or you want to check out anything else, make sure that you go to America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. All right, Ross, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. As a reminder, make sure that you tune in to the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins, the barber, the OG, my guy, Tony Wiggins, in the barbershop, breaking down some of the other great matchups that we got this weekend. But what may be, even though the records aren't as perfect as some of the other matchups that we've discussed, the names of the teams and the quality of the teams certainly should live up to the hype. It is the Buffalo Bills against the Baltimore Ravens. Kevin from Locked On Ravens, Joe from Locked On Bills discuss this matchup.
And they go out there, and Derrick Henry has 25 carries for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. You know, we saw the vintage Derrick Henry stiff arm on Kalen Carson, kind of a welcome to the NFL moment for the rookie there. But with the Ravens and what they need to be able to do here and what they want to continue to do, it's just not getting too far away from it, because we know Baltimore's team is a run-first team. Their identity is in the run game. But when you are able to get Derrick Henry rolling like we saw against Dallas in week 3, for example, defenses will have to respect that by either stacking the box or just focusing more attention on that ground game. What you can do is, even though Mark Andrews hasn't had the best start to the season, he certainly struggled through these first 3 weeks. Isaiah likely hasn't had the week 1 success that we saw over these last couple. But you can work play action off of that. And when you find guys biting on that play fake, it leaves wide open receiving lanes for these guys, one-on-one opportunities.
Listen, Buffalo has been okay against the run this year. I think they're 17th in the league right now in rushing yards allowed, but Baltimore is first in the NFL in rushing defense. And we know that watching the Bills this year, at least I have been talking on the show about how this might be a different version of the Bills than we've seen, but with how good their O-line is and how good their D-line is, it might be the best version of Buffalo that we've seen with Josh Allen. If Baltimore could stop the run and force Josh Allen to play hero ball, they might be able to force him into some mistakes. And Baltimore needs to, because if they lose this game, which they are underdogs here, and they should be, they drop to 1-3. And look, the schedule isn't too crazy. They play at the Bengals, but that's always a tough game. Then the Commanders, who that Monday Night Football game might have people higher on the Commanders than they want to be, at the Bucks, at the Browns, Broncos, Bengals again. Like, the Ravens can definitely bounce back here, but the question for the Ravens isn't, can you get into the playoffs? It's, can you get back to the level you were at last year and then go higher? And I think they need to prove it to themselves by beating a quality team in the Buffalo Bills here. So I'm looking for the Ravens to kind of prove that they're not in the funk that it looks like they're in.
Yeah, and look, listen to everything we're talking about here, right? Run game, defense. This is probably going to be a low-scoring game when it comes to what are two otherwise seen as premier offenses in the league under usual circumstances. But the last 3 of these games, these matchups between the Bills and the Ravens, according to Next Gen Stats, have come in at less than 42 points. The over-under over at FanDuel right now is 46.5. I might smash that under when it comes to this one, when it comes to it. But I will say this. I think that one of the key things that's going to go down in this game is going to be whether or not Derrick Henry can be vintage Derrick Henry. I mean, between Derrick Henry and James Cook, you're in for some talented running back play in this game. There's no doubt about that. But the factor, and you're very well versed in the language of the clan Henry. When it comes to Derrick Henry, the thing that sets him apart is his ability to run through contact. And if you can get guys to him, that's one thing. If you can get him down, that's a different thing. He has been on fire in terms of broken tackles generated, things like that so far this season. That could be a big deciding factor. And then, of course, Lamar Jackson, what he can do with his legs, Josh Allen, what he can do with his legs. This is going to be such a fun matchup to watch.
Yeah, and if it's an ugly game, at the end of the day, it might come down to which quarterback can make that play with their legs and extend a play and kind of make that magical play. Like, who is going to be the guy that steps up and do it? And one thing I do want to point out here, though, if Baltimore is able to run the football, then they're not going to be in those pure passing situations as much. And then Von Miller and Groot, Gregory Rousseau, but I love that nickname, Groot. I just call him Groot every time. You know what I mean? Like the pass rush, Ed Oliver, of course. If Baltimore is able to run the ball, then the Bills can't unleash that pass rush like we've seen them do in some of these games where they got up early, and that might make it harder for them to make the impact, and then Lamar moving around as well. So that's going to be a great game to watch. Another great game to watch for me is going to be the Detroit Lions against the Seattle Seahawks, because I said on yesterday's Locked On NFL with Michelle Majuk that I think the Seahawks are pretenders. I don't trust the 3-0 record. They played the Patriots. They played the Broncos. They played the Dolphins with Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle last week. I think the Seahawks are improved. I had them as a playoff team, but I don't think they're as good as a 3-0 record would say. And then the Lions are dealing with some injuries. So let's go to my guy Corbin from Locked On Seahawks and my guy Matt from Locked On Lions. Talk about this matchup.
You better have some people chipping on Aiden Hutchinson. That is the number one thing, especially with Marcus Davenport being out. This feels like a game where if the Seahawks can find a way to at least somewhat contain Hutchinson, he's going to make his plays, but can you find a way to get a tight end chipping, running back chipping, both of them chipping, max protect, give Geno Smith enough time that he can get the ball to his receivers. This will be the best trio of receivers that the Lions have faced this year. So they're going to have to deal with DK, who is having a career year. Jack Smith and Jigba had 100-plus yards, 12 catches a couple weeks ago. Tyler Lockett is still Tyler Lockett. Maybe not the prime Tyler Lockett, but still a very good player. Noah Fant had 6 catches for 60 yards last week. But Seattle's got weapons after an offense. It's going to matter if Aiden Hutchinson's getting in the backfield every single play. So they've got to be able to do that. And I think getting the run game going also is a way to slow him down a little.
Well, here's the thing. The Seahawks have gotten away with some things because of their schedule. They've turned over the ball twice and lost the turnover battle the last 2 weeks. If Aiden Hutchinson is getting pressure on the right tackle situation, there's some injury concern there. Abraham Lucas, and they got Forsythe in it, right? Like, there are injury concerns on the right side, and if Aiden Hutchinson can take advantage and force some of those turnovers again, the Lions aren't the Broncos. The Lions aren't the Patriots. And if the Seahawks turn over the ball like that again, the Lions will take advantage. And I think this is a moment where I want to see the Seahawks prove it. That's how I feel. If you're as good as you say, let's prove it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got right now Aiden Hutchinson with 15 total pressures. That's tied for 8th most in the league right now. Stone Forsythe, who's already given up 13 pressures on just 103 pass blocking snaps. Not a great matchup if you're the Seattle Seahawks. I will say this is one of the things that you just kind of sign up for when you're a defense like formerly the New England Patriots, right now the Detroit Lions, right now the New Orleans Saints. They play a lot of man coverage. And of course, Tyler, as you know, when we talk about man heavy defenses, we're talking over 40-45%. We're not talking 70-80% here. But the Detroit Lions are up there, second most man snaps. Geno Smith has been excellent against man coverage, over a 70% completion percentage against man coverage. That could be something that ends up causing some issues with the talent at wide receiver that Seattle has, with how composed and experienced Geno Smith is. That could end up going their way. But if Aiden Hutchinson is creating that pressure, wreaking that havoc, they won't get the advantage to take it. They won't get the opportunity, rather, to take advantage of that. So to me, that's a big part of this matchup that I'm watching in terms of the Seattle offense versus Detroit's man-heavy defense.
Ooh, man. Ross, that's why they call you the mastermind. Excellent points right there. I mean, every week is a great week, but man, there are some really, really good matchups out there.
Mhm.
You also you're talking about that man coverage. You got to think Tyrion Arnold, limited,
Yeah,
questionable with
right.
the illness.
Right.
Brian Branch, still a young player in the slot. They got Melifonwu and Rakestraw were out earlier this week in practice. So some cluster injuries in the Lions secondary that could, kind of highlight the talent that the Seahawks have at wide receiver and make it even more difficult. So we're seeing injuries start to impact these games, cluster things, certain talent levels at certain position groups. Man, I can't wait for the football to be here just a couple of days, folks. So a good Thursday night football game, a great week of football ahead. And obviously we'll be back with you guys on Monday morning to break it all down. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed here to the Locked On NFL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team. As I tell you guys every single show, stay safe out there.